Hello everyone. Wow, what a vibe that we have here. Now, welcome to our one of the most exciting panels, may I say. Well, I'm not being competitive, I'm just being a lawyer. How are you feeling today?
Oh, it's fantastic to be here. I'm excited to see so many people engaged in Australia, Vietnam, and great to be here with yourself today.
Thank you so much for being here with us. How about you, Luan? How are you
Great
feeling?
too. I mean, I see the diversity in the crowd is 50-50, which is great.
Amazing. And can you tell me and the audience a little bit about yourself and also your favorite Vietnamese dish? Because I'm dying to know.
Hi everyone, my name's Dominique Vihan. I'm an Associate Director at RMIT University and I lead the Australia Vietnam Policy Institute, which is a platform for engagement, knowledge sharing and policy insights around Australia's relationship with Vietnam and more recently around Vietnam's relationship with Australia as well. And my favourite dish, I can't pick one. If I'm in the north, it has to be bún chả, and if I'm in the south, it's com tam.
Amazing. My favorite as well. What about you, Luan?
Okay, just a bit about myself. My name is Lung Lai. I'm actually living in Australia for 35 years, so I'm overseas Vietnamese as well. So I was feeling that way before now. I've been working in the banking fintech industry for about 25 odd years. Recently moved back to Vietnam about 3 years ago. I've always been in cyberspace. So my favorite dish has to be com tam, like you said. But when I'm in Hanoi, it has to be pho.
Amazing. I can eat pho every day. Now you see what I'm doing here. I'm building trust. Just learning from the last panels, because when we talk food, that's where you build trust, yeah? Because now I know your weakness. If I need to talk to you about something, I invite you to bún chả and I invite you to pho. So, well, let's dive into this. I've got a question for the two of you. Now, we've got a diverse audience here, you know, someone that is a student or someone who've just started their career, but we also have executives, seniors, positions, people who have been in the workforce for a while and feeling a bit jaded about their life. So what's the most important quality or mindset you think leaders need to thrive in the growing business connections between Australia and Vietnam?
Before I answer this question, I guess, I work for NAB, so I want to prop NAB a bit. I see a few CPA people there. I think you're working CPA.
We have a spy.
But can I ask, obviously Vietnamese, is there any one of you want to come back to Vietnam at all? Because my answer could be tailored in many different ways. I think, for me, anyway, from key takeaway is really, I've been working in Vietnam for three and a half, 4 years. And NAB is just the last 6 months, but cultural differences between Vietnam and Australia are quite different, right? So as an overseas Vietnamese, you have to make sure you bridge that kind of gaps. Australia tend to be very straightforward, can be very snappy in what we ask, right? But Vietnamese need a bit more time. Like I can remember the last speaker was mentioning about, take a bit of time to get to know people and build trust and relations through that way. But my job is basically to make sure we bridge the two. I'll be like the conduit between what Australians are saying and what Vietnamese are saying, especially when I work for NAB right now. I'm providing the services back to NAB Australia. So we have to do that all day, every day. Yeah.
That's a fantastic answer, and you stole everything I wanted to say. But no, more seriously, I find that when working across Australia, Vietnam, the biggest thing that I've noticed is that there is a really different mindset. And I think to be able to succeed across that relationship, you do need to be curious about the differences, but you also need to be adaptable. So for me, the very first time I started working in Vietnam and I went to Vietnam, I noticed that there was a really different approach to basically work-life separation. Most of the relationships I built with colleagues or with professional partners, I actually built outside of the office. So I remember sitting in Hanoi humidity in a suit on these tiny blue stools, eating street food, or in hot, noisy beer halls, but that's where the relationships were built. And that's where I really got to know these people on a personal level, in many cases meeting their families as well. And I found that being able to be curious enough to say yes to those opportunities and to learn from, the way that business is done there, but also being able to be adaptable and to go and to sit on the stalls and to drink beer with work colleagues, which isn't something that always happens here in the same way, really then led to the trust that was needed over there. So I think being able to stay curious and adaptable would be the key things that I've noticed that you need to succeed across the relationship.
Amazing. I think that's what we've been discussing about in all the panels today, just being curious and building that trusting relationship. Now, I've got a question for you. You've led strategic initiatives like the Australia-Vietnam Policy Institute and the RMIT Asia Trade and Innovation Hub. What are some of the key insights you've gained about fostering collaboration and understanding between Australia and Vietnam?
Yeah, I'm going to talk to this one more from the Australia-Vietnam Policy Institute lens as we look at particularly bilateral engagement and collaboration, whereas the Asia Trade and Innovation Hub looks more at regional. So as I've heard on previous panels today, and I agree with, it's not one size fits all. But for Vietnam, what I've noticed is when we've been consulting with Australian businesses engaging with Vietnam and Vietnamese businesses engaging with Australia, there is a really keen interest on both sides of the relationship to engage. And there is also a growing acknowledgement that there are some really good synergies here. Australia is really strong in sectors that could benefit Vietnam. To name a few, education, climate transition, critical minerals and resources. Australia has some great strengths. And then Vietnam has such a dynamic economy and dynamic culture. It's got its fast-growing GDP. It's got a really entrepreneurial spirit. It's got a vast population. So there are some really good mutually beneficial opportunities. But the thing that is stopping a lot of those being harnessed, and the thing that we're hearing a lot through the AVPI consultations, is that there is a bit of a gap or a lag in knowing how to engage across the relationship and how to make the most of those synergies. And where we're seeing organisations succeed, and I think NAB is a really good example of this, we heard from earlier today, is they're really approaching these opportunities from a people-focused point of view. So they're looking at how can we build bridges through our people, and they're harnessing things like alumni networks, students that have studied in Australia or Vietnam that have an understanding of both cultures. They're also harnessing diaspora communities, and they're hiring with cultural intelligence and adaptability in mind. They're hiring from institutions like RMIT Vietnam, where students learn a bit about both cultures, and then they're using that mobility of basically people across the relationship, so the skills mobility, but also that adaptability of cultural intelligence to then be able to expand in the opposite country. So what we're seeing is people are absolutely key. There's a really strong opportunity here if you know how to grasp it, but if you go in cold and you go in fast, you're probably not going to be able to make the most of it.
Amazing, thank you. What do you think, Lon? Some of the key insights from the people who are actually on the ground.
So I think it's the reverse. You take a lot of the stuff I wanted to say too, but so in NAP, let's go in NAP for a second right now. So we get work from Australia coming in. I have a team of almost 100 people in Vietnam currently executing the work for NAP. I have a bunch of, which the team is in Vietnamese, right? So most Vietnamese, so their communication, a lot of the people here speak English quite well now, but it's still a second language. So it's very, very hard. So for us, for me anyway, how to move this is be able to get build a buffer zone, the team. So the team will be communicating back to Australia and also build that collaboration with the team underneath. We can do more of that. And certainly we partner with RMIT to do a lot more in terms of intern style camper we do a lot of. So basically build that up to serve us back to Australia. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think that's one of the key strategy that I've seen NAB's been doing recently as well. Now, talking about these stories, like on the ground stories, can you think of any sort of example of how an OV's unique background has become an asset in reaching that Australian business? Do you have a live example?
I probably can't give you a live example because NAB told me not to mention anything because I work in group security. Look, I think from the dynamic of groups in security in general, definitely there's a big shortage in Australia right now, actually globally in cyberspace. Okay, things like that coming back, it's vitally important, right? We do cloud security. We do a bunch of network defense. The strength in Vietnam right now, I see, is all about pen testing. Okay, we're very strong in offensive security. Okay, we got probably one of the best pen testers in the world. So there's a few others, but data is also something that I think we do.
Okay, and so that's in terms of knowledge. In terms of skill sets, so soft skills, what have you seen that's been the most beneficial in that space?
Soft skill. Like I said before, the way that Vietnam work, or the people in Vietnam, they're slightly different to Australia. It takes a bit of time to get to build rapport and basically build that kind of thing. The trust is there. Whereas Australia is a bit more upbeat and basically straightforward. In terms of soft skill, I think it's getting there. But that's why as an overseas Vietnamese, we're in the best position to be that bridge, to build the two gap. Right? And I think most of the speakers here probably got the same kind of message because that's what we see. When you hop down to the ground in Vietnam, that's what you see all the time. It's that bridge between the two places. Yeah.
Awesome. And in terms of, those are individual ones, but in terms of businesses, I have a question for you. For leaders, what are some cultural things, like coming from an Australian perspective, what are some of the key things that leaders should be aware of when building or scaling companies in both markets? Actually, what is the one thing that surprises you the most about doing business in Vietnam?
I think it is speed, and I mean this in two ways. I mean, one, it can be very slow to do business in Vietnam from the beginning because you do need the time to build those trust and relationships. So you can't go into Vietnam with let's get this objective done in the next 3 months mindset. That simply won't work. But then on the flip side of that, once you are embedded in Vietnam, once you have a local workforce, once you have those relationships, the sky is the limit. Vietnam is so fast in the way that it can move, in the way that it can scale. We saw that with the NAB growth story just before, and we've seen it with RMIT Vietnam as well. And it's very adaptable. Like we found ourselves at RMIT during COVID, there was a much larger demand for in-country study. A lot of students that would usually go overseas couldn't go overseas because of border closures, so they wanted to study in country. And RMIT Vietnam almost doubled in size in a 24-month period. I'm not sure we could have achieved that here, but in Vietnam, anything is possible if there's the need for it, but also if there's the relationships and the trust to underpin it. So it's speed on both sides there.
No, I absolutely agree with you. When I came back to Vietnam 11 years ago now in 2014, I was very surprised that in Vietnam, anything is possible. It can go very fast, but it can go very slow, depending who you know. So that's one key insight that I took away from my time in Vietnam. And when I moved to Australia 8 years ago, I'm very surprised because it's so slow. Everything's so slow. You want to see a doctor? 3 months, baby. You want to build a house? It can take six months to a year in Vietnam. We talk about leadership, we talk about businesses. Now, I'm curious to know for the young audience here, in terms of, the young professionals who are looking to begin a career that potentially can leverage their understanding and language between Australia and Vietnam. What is some advice for them?
So obviously, I'm like you guys a few years back. I've been working in APAC for a number of years, 10 odd years, and always looking to Vietnam, but always too scared to jump in because there's always that unknown, right? But 3 years ago, I took a leap of faith, right? Just jumped in with 2 feet. I got lost, of course, because working for a local bank. For those that are Australian want to come back, NAB is a great stepping stone. Once you step into NAB office in Ho Chi Minh City, right? You feel like NAB in Australia. You feel like home. And you walk out of that, you feel like you're in Vietnam again. So it's a great, that transportation, for me anyway. And look, cyber is, like I said, very, very niche. Okay, and I speak cyber, and obviously for NAB, we're very big in engineering and also QE as well. So please, if you're interested, please let us know. But for cyber, it was definitely very niche. So I, would like to take on because you have an advantage right now as obviously Vietnamese, right? You understand Australian way of working. A lot of you probably work for an Australian company before, or even better, banks. And if you're in IT, it's a great to come back because you're halfway there. Now, all you have to do is find your roots in terms of being Vietnamese again. Of course, I speak a bit of broken Vietnamese before, but now I speak a bit more broken, but a little bit better. But karaoke does work. If you go karaoke, you go up. But yeah, I think NAB is a great conduit for you guys. So if you come back and you want to make sort of like a journey for yourself, come back. And I'm sure there will be more and more Australian, like I think AusCham was saying, more and more Australian businesses coming back this way. And vice versa, we're seeing Vietnamese startup are going back to Australia as well. All right, so there's a lot of niche market we can do.
What do you think, Dominic?
Yeah, I think definitely echoing that. There is a lot of opportunity in bilateral organisations on both sides of the relationship. But one thing I think that is often missed is that some organisations really see the value of that cultural competency across both sides, but some are still just starting to realise it. So I think one really practical thing you can do if you want to work in this space and you have a bit of a bicultural background is learn how to frame that. Learn how to go into a job interview and talk to that in a way that shows that you're a really unique asset for them and that they'd be crazy not to leverage you. I've got Vietnamese Australians in my team and they have been absolutely invaluable, and I definitely see the value in that, but I'm in an organisation that has been in Vietnam for 25 years, so it's a widely known thing. But some organisations that are newly bridging the cultural divide, they're still learning what they need. So help and show them that they actually need you. They need overseas Vietnamese. They need people that understand how to operate in both contexts, and they need people that are curious and passionate about bridging that Australia-Vietnam relationship.
Amazing. And we've been talking about this, and this is the running theme of today. Now, this is not on the script, so you might be caught out on this question, but I'm very curious. You're all leaders in your field, and if you could think about a moment in your career that really, changed the whole journey or bring you to where you are today, that one key thing that shaped you and put you where you are, what would that be?
I have to say my divorce. I'm sorry for the lawyers out there. I'm great for the lawyers out there, but it changes me for everything. Like, I was an introvert. After divorce, I became an extrovert. I was in Australia doing everyday job, and then suddenly I jumped to another country. It's just be more adventurous, right? So, yeah, come down to that.
Did you have
Thank
a good
you.
lawyer?
It's my ex-wife.
Oh, how can we top this, Dominic?
Oh, I don't think we can. Maybe I should get divorced. Just joking. No, I think for me, it probably was COVID actually. Like I was at the time already working, looking at Australia, Vietnam, but from a very kind of traditional lens, you know, how can we engage with Vietnam in Vietnam? How can we fly over there every second month and do engagement and fly back? And COVID made us realize that engagement across countries is actually an everyday thing. It's not a fly in, fly out, we're done. And I think that realization then led to the thinking that has birthed the Australia-Vietnam Policy Institute and the work that we're doing, but it's also changed the way that I view working in this space, but working in general. So, somehow being locked in my, house or bedroom for many years actually was a positive when I look at it in hindsight. At the time, it absolutely was not. Melbourne lockdowns were not celebrated, but looking back, it was a good catalyst for me.
Thank you very much. Now, as we come close to the end of the panel, I just want to have a shout out to Vietcetera. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to come together in this space to celebrate our identity, to celebrate our milestones, our career, to celebrate this wonderful relationship that is blossomed between Vietnam and Australia. When I came back to Vietnam from the UK in 2014, I was lost. I was a lost child coming back to Vietnam. I spent a significant amount of time in the UK growing up by myself. And so I deeply resonated with shredding a lot of the Vietnamese-ness in me to fit in. And so I resonate a lot with the messages that were spoken about today, even though I was born and raised in Vietnam. And when I came back in 2014, there was no Western media that talked about Vietnam. And I found Vietcetera, it's one of the mediums that sort of give me that Western field, but also sort of Vietnamese. It was an online magazine back then, and I found you guys, and you had a guide to like the top bars in Saigon, and that was a lifesaver. So that was my first impression with Vietcetera, and I just can't imagine that today, 11 years later, I'm sitting in Australia, in this room full of bright people, in this Vietcetera conference, and sharing and hearing all these insights. And it's incredible the journey that you guys have gone through, and you've grown so much in that short space. And Katao, I have a lot to thank you for your stories, for your courage to share your own personal story. And I'm sure all of us here have been impacted in many ways by that story. And I remember when I was moving to my new house a couple of months ago, and you know how packing is like. It's a terrible nightmare when you try and move houses, when you accumulate it all your life and you just pack up and, move somewhere. But your podcast, actually, I put it on, and as I was listening, I was packing all my stuff, and it resonated so deeply with me, and I was crying as I was packing my stuff. So if you haven't listened to Katao postcard, go and do that. It will change your life, I'm sure. And thank you so much for being here today and listening to our stories. Thank you very much to the panel.